everyone. This is Jenna Stevens with the Current Eye Concerns Media Group, and joining me today is Tessa Cripsing, the executive chef at the Merrill Hotel in Muscatine, Iowa. Thank you for talking with me today, Tessa. So can you go ahead and just give me a little bit of an introduction to your career? What is it that you do as an executive chef?
So right now, I am currently employed by the Merrill Hotel and Conference Center in Muscatine, Iowa. And I've been here for about a year and a half. We are a 122-room hotel, 4-star hotel, with over 10,000 square feet of conference space on our 6th floor. And we also have a full-service restaurant on our main level that is open 7 days a week from 6 o'clock in the morning to 10 o'clock at night. So there's a bunch of different outlets that I'm responsible for overseeing. I have a team of 10 to 11. And previous to this position, I worked for Hy-Vee Food Stores for 3.5 years as an executive chef also. That was more of a retail position. And that was that's like the job that stands out the most as kind of an oddball in my resume. So that was, instead of it being in a commercial kitchen environment where I have a kitchen team and all these different events, this was a little bit more focused on creating a personal relationship with guests and customers of the grocery store. And it was a much more personal one-on-one approach, and it was a very educational position that I was in. So I got a lot of experience teaching cooking classes and doing small seminars, demonstrations. So it was a kind of an oddball position, but it was a really cool position to round out my my resume.
And so how have you taken that experience that you have gained from Hy-Vee and transferred that to your current position?
When I started with Hy-Vee, I went from a more traditional executive chef role for a country club. So I went from being a team of 8 or 9 total to a team of 1, and I worked alone for most of those 3.5 years. So the first thing it immediately taught me was to never underestimate the power of the people that work with you and around you and for you. I don't ever feel like I took my team for granted, but I never imagined what it would be like to work without them. And I have a much greater appreciation for just to have a team in general and not to be working alone. So that was immediate. And another great thing that I got from that position was a greater understanding of the grocery business, a greater understanding of what it takes to transport food across nations, across our nation, different handling procedures that they use for produce, just to be a little bit more knowledgeable about that. And like I said, I did a lot of teaching, and so that gave me a lot of confidence to present myself in that way in front of groups of up to 50, 60 people, and learn to be very comfortable in doing that. And now in this role, which is the most true executive chef position I've been in, I can run presentations for our ownership, for our corporate office all by myself, and feel very, very confident in doing so. So those are just kind of some quick hitter skills that I know for sure that I got directly from that position with Hy-Vee.
And you talked a lot about that team that is surrounding you. As a student who is looking to maybe go into this career, how do you manage working with a team? What is kind of the key that you need to know going into that position to really make the most of your team and come to an understanding that works for everybody?
And this really translates to a lot more than just my job, just life in general. I always try to stop and take a moment and put myself in the other person's shoes before, this is like before I lend some constructive criticism all the way to before I deliver a disciplinary action. It's just one of those things I always do is I always stop and think about what does this feel like for them? What is it going to feel like for them? what might be going on in their life. One of the biggest pieces of advice is that, we all have bad days. And as much as you don't want to bring that into work, we're all human. And just having that sense of connection with the people that you work with, and to understand that we are all different. We have one goal in mind. We're all on the same team. And, delivering excellent execution in the dishes that we put out, in the banquet service that we do, that's obviously the end goal. Making money is an end goal, but none of that can happen unless we really understand the people that are working next to us and respect them. Respect. If I had to pick one piece of advice, is to always respect the people that you work next to. It doesn't matter what they have on their resume. It doesn't matter what kitchens they've worked in. That's not what makes somebody great. What makes somebody great is to be able to respect the individuals that you work with as a team, because that's what creates that really great close-knit team environment.
And that's great advice, because it is sometimes a challenge to work with people, especially if you're coming into a situation not performing at your best in that moment. So very good advice there. Can you talk to us a little bit about the training and the education that you pursued in order to get where you are?
Yeah, absolutely. I started off, I gotta go back in time a little bit here. I started off going to Scott Community College for culinary arts very shortly after I graduated from high school. And at that point, I had already had probably like 3 years being a line cook under my belt. And I knew that this was for sure what I wanted to do. And I started at Scott. I did 2 semesters there. All in all, I don't think that I had a very good sense of, work, school, life balance. I was really young, and I wasn't as fully committed to it at that point in time as what I could have been. And so I decided to take a little bit of a break, focus on work, focus on developing my skills through my job. And about 9 months later, I decided to go ahead and just pull the trigger, and I enrolled at Le Cordon Bleu in Chicago. And that switch had a lot to do with some other personal goals I had at that time. I think community college is a fantastic way to get an education in the culinary arts. I wanted to move, and I really wanted to go to Chicago. And I had a couple of mentors who highly recommended that campus, and that kind of fueled my decision to go ahead and just take a big leap and move into a big city all by myself. And that culinary program was 5 days a week, 9 hours a day. So it was very rigorous. We started classes at 6 o'clock in the morning. So it was very structured, which I enjoyed. And the biggest thing about that program was, because it was so intense and so fast, and we put in so many hours per week, is that I received my degree in, 15 months' time.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So I wanted something really accelerated. That was a big factor for me. So I like to learn on the job, and this was a fast-paced schooling, and then also it left enough time for me to work full-time plus overtime at a couple of different establishments in Chicago as well.
So you talked about how you kind of knew going into college that this is what you wanted to do, and how do you advise students who maybe aren't quite sure? What gave you that sense of, I know what I want to do?
My story is a lot different than a lot of other chefs, I think. I actually first decided that I wanted to be a chef when I was 8 years old. That aside from, I had a little bit of time where I thought that I maybe wanted to go into the medical field as a first responder. Other than that, maybe 6 month period of time, I have always wanted to be involved in the culinary arts in some way. So it was very, very young. I always tell everybody that I really do feel like I was meant to be a chef, because I just kind of decided I was a child and it never really went away. So, for somebody who's maybe, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 years old, that is asking themselves, the same question, do I really want to do this? A couple pieces of advice: attention to detail, holding yourself to a high standard is what really what will set you apart when it comes to being in a commercial kitchen. Doing things the right way and just having respect for what you are doing. I always, when I speak to my line cooks and when I'm training them, one big thing is every time that they put a plate of food out of my kitchen, that's my food on that plate. Make this like you would want me to be proud of it. Make it like you would want to be proud of it. Make it like, the president or somebody famous is on the other side of the wall going to the dining room. And that's the kind of standard that you should hold yourself to. If you're not prepared to do that, then maybe this isn't for you. But there's a lot of people that, just, I call it sling and hatch. You work in a restaurant where they're just flying food out the door and there's not a whole lot of, finesse and time and love put into it. And if you want to stand out, you need to have all of those things. And it all starts with holding yourself to a high standard and having respect for the work that you do personally.
And so can you kind of give me a rundown, like what does a typical day look like for you? How do you manage your time? How do you manage your employees? Kind of what are your day-to-day?
So I work about 6 days a week, usually 12 hours a day for about 5 of those days. And then the sixth day, I can usually get that down to like an 8 or 9 hour day. And one of the biggest reasons why is because I love to work and I'm very career driven. But I think it's pretty reasonable to expect that you would work close to 60 hours a week as an executive chef in a facility like what I work in. My day usually starts, 8 o'clock in the morning and goes until about 8 o'clock at night. What that does is it allows me to be here at the tail end of what would be like our busy section of breakfast. I'm available to assist and direct my team through our lunch rush. And then I'm also available to oversee the preparation for all the components that we need for our dinner menu and get through the dinner rush. And so those are like the key service times of the day for the restaurant. And so that's why I choose those hours. When I first get here in the morning, I usually check in with who is on staff in the kitchen, ask them first and foremost if they need anything from me in that moment. Usually the answer is no. And then I hit the espresso machine right after that. That is a very, very important part of my daily routine. We do a morning stand-up in our GM's office, which is a pretty common daily meeting in the hotel industry. So what that does is it gets me in contact with the person that I directly report to, which is my general manager, and all of the other department heads. So it's like the executive level management and then the lower management. Anybody who is scheduled to work that day reports for stand-up. And it's just like a quick rundown of what we have on our radar for the day. And we share all that information. The GM shares with us daily information that we might need. And then I usually head back down to the first floor. I try to knock out any paperwork, desk work that I have between that like 9:15, 9:30 up until about 11:30. That's a really good window for me to do paperwork. And then another really great window is from about 2 to 4. And then beyond that, I finish up any paperwork after about 7:30. And all of that is kind of designed around the service of the restaurant and those peak periods that we've grown to understand and be able to plan for. So I'm responsible for all of the ordering for food and beverage. I'm responsible for coding and processing the invoices for my entire department. And I'm responsible for, we call it forecasting. So we do this a 3-month section at a time, and we update it weekly. So not only do I have the freedom to spend the money for my department and keep track of it, I also have to forecast what I think that I'm going to spend in a given month, and that gets updated weekly. So, for example, if I thought that we were going to do 10 grand in a week, but then we had an excellent Friday night and we exceeded our expectations, and I would adjust that forecast. So just having this job has taught me more about having a very firm grasp and understanding of the numbers that I run and the control that I have over them than any other position that I've been in. So I am responsible for a lot more administrative tasks than I ever have been before, which has been a really big learning experience for a couple of different reasons. One, I didn't have those skills. I had no understanding of how to code invoices and really manage my department from an administrative side. And then the other thing too is it taught me a little bit about myself personally, because before I was running around in the kitchen all the time, overseeing my team all the time, and didn't have as much administrative tasks. And just that shift into a little bit more desk work than what I was used to, that was big for me, because I'm a mover and a shaker, and I like to cook, and it's the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing. So being able to learn these skills and organize my time in a way to where I can do both sides of my job as efficiently as possible. It took some time to figure that out, but now I think I've got it down pretty well, where I can really hammer out work in the kitchen and at the desk in a really efficient way.
And the desk side of something isn't what I would have typically thought of your position. And so that brings me to question, if I were a high school student listening to this, would you recommend maybe taking some basic business courses or accounting courses? Would that help you in that administrative role?
Maybe some basics. It's not, I guess without having taken those classes myself, it's hard for me to answer that. You know, being able to calculate your food costs and things like that, and being able to, so what this process has really done for me is I'm able to predict my food costs in a much more accurate way than I ever was before. And all of these skills I've learned right on the job. So I work for a company, I work for the hotel, but I'm technically employed by a hotel management company called Hostmark, and they're based out of Chicago. And they have a corporate controller, so a corporate accountant. And when it came time for me to learn these new skills, fortunately, the training that I needed to handle these tasks was provided for me in a very thorough way. So I was able to receive all the training that I needed specific to these tasks right on the job. And just for the record, I absolutely hate math. I am a right-brained thinker, so I'm creative. I like to create dishes. That's why I love my job. And I struggle a little bit with math and accounting. So I was really lucky to have someone who was patient in teaching me these new skills. And after a little bit of practice, I mean, I can almost do it with my eyes closed. Whether or not it would benefit you to take a different training course, I'm not quite sure.
That makes sense. I'm definitely with you on the math thing. That's certainly not my cup of tea as well. So I'm glad there's other people out there that can perform those tasks with math and be successful. That gives me hope for the future.
So there's a lot of math. Besides all the accounting stuff, there's a lot of math that is a part of my daily job. You know, if I have we call them banquet event orders. So it's a sheet for each event that we have on the 6th floor. It shows us all of the details. So we have somebody who fills these out, and that's basically their job, to detail an event. And then they provide me with a sheet that has the guest count, the arrival time, the menu, all of that stuff in one place. And so when I get that information and then need to relay it to my team in a way that makes sense to them for prep, I use math all the time to calculate, you know, how many pounds of green beans we're going to be trimming up and preparing, and how many ounces of pork or chicken or beef we're going to be preparing, and things like that. So very simple math comes up on the hour every hour, but it was the more accounting stuff that just took me a little while to get my head wrapped around. But just because you don't know it doesn't mean you can't learn it. If I can learn how to do accounting, I trust that all of you listening will be just fine.
And that's good too. And it's good that you say that, because I think sometimes students maybe get wrapped up in the fact that they don't necessarily know how to do something. And I think in your position especially, I'm sure that the ability to just jump in has saved you a lot over the years.
Oh, absolutely. And while we're on that subject, I just want to point out that, you know, like I said, I have a team of 10, 11 people. They all come from different walks of life. They all come from different experience backgrounds, different educational backgrounds. And what that really boils down to is that every single person on my team, myself included, has their own set of strengths and weaknesses. So, there are people on my team. I have more experience than, I probably have 8 more years of experience in my field than anybody else that works on my team. But there are things that they can do better than me. And that's the way that it should be, because in order for us to be this really efficient machine, we have to really use our strengths to override our weaknesses. And you can't do that without other people. So that it all comes back to that respect thing. Respect people as individuals, respect that, man, you're really great at cream sauces and I'm not. So, maybe I'm going to ask you to do that, and then you're going to ask me to do something that maybe you're not so great at, and maybe we'll be able to teach each other, sort of thing. So just really, really putting things together like that is really what makes my team very close-knit and efficient.
That's good to hear, and it's something that it doesn't matter really what industry you're working in. You can't get away from working with people, and so your ability to play off of those strengths and weaknesses is certainly something that is going to be beneficial in every aspect of what you decide to do with your career.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Just to kind of wrap this up, last thing, what advice would you give for any high school kid or anyone that comes across this? What is your biggest piece of advice? What's your biggest takeaway?
Do what makes you happy. If you can't find something within your career that makes you feel like you're doing something great for yourself on a regular basis, then keep looking. Because if you're not happy at your job, it's going to have a really big impact on the rest of the happiness in your life. We spend many, many hours in the course of our lifetime working, which is how the world goes around. And I wouldn't have it any other way. But if you don't at least partly love what you do, it's not going to work out as well for you.
That is a perfect piece to end on. Thank you so much, Tessa. That was Tessa Cruikshank, Executive Chef at the Merrill Hotel in Muscatine, and I am Jenna Stevens with Current Ag Concern.